Be me, 52 years old, worked my whole career in local government community services. Spent decades advocating for equal access to public resources, always made sure every initiative I touched was inclusive and open to everyone who wanted to participate. Genuinely believed in fairness, in making sure no one got left behind or shut out just because of arbitrary categories. Hear about this men in sheds thing popping up in our borough. Community workshop spaces where retired guys build birdhouses and repair furniture or whatever. Funded partially through council grants, using public facilities, community center space that everyone's taxes pay for. First time I hear about it, I don't think much of it. Just seems like a hobby group for old men who like woodworking. Then I'm reviewing quarterly reports for community programs, and I see the funding allocation. They're getting a decent chunk of money, free building space, tools purchased through community development budgets. Notice in their constitution, they're explicitly registered as a men-only organization. Sit there staring at the paperwork for a while. Something about it just doesn't sit right with me. Not angry exactly, just confused about why in this day and age we're creating segregated spaces. Mention it casually to a colleague over coffee. Oh yeah, the men in sheds thing, it's supposed to be about male loneliness or something. She says it like it's obvious, like that explains everything. But I keep thinking about it over the next few days. What about women who are lonely, who want to learn woodworking, who need community? Why should they be excluded from a publicly funded resource? Start doing some reading about the program, the national organization, their stated mission. All this language about safe spaces for men and male bonding and traditional masculine activities. The more I read, the more uncomfortable I get. Not because I don't think men deserve support, obviously everyone deserves support, but because the entire premise seems built on this assumption that men can't be themselves around women, which feels like it's rooted in some pretty outdated ideas about gender, if I'm being honest. Decide to attend a community council meeting where they're discussing the program's expansion. Sit in the back, just listening at first. Mostly older guys, talking about how great it is, how they look forward to Tuesday and Thursday mornings. One guy talks about how his wife died 2 years ago, and the shed is the only place he feels comfortable now. I feel a pang of sympathy. Obviously that's rough. Losing a spouse is devastating. But then I think about widows too. They exist. They're lonely too. Why aren't we talking about including them? When they open the floor for questions, I raise my hand. Very calmly, very professionally, ask about the rationale for the male-only restriction. Explain that I'm asking from a policy perspective, given the public funding involved. Immediately get this defensive response from the program coordinator. Middle-aged guy, kind of patronizing tone, explaining to me like I'm a child about male suicide rates and social isolation. I know the statistics, I work in community services, I'm not questioning whether men need support. I'm questioning whether that support needs to exclude women to be effective. He does this thing where he smiles like he's being patient with me and says, it's just nice for the lads to have their own space. The word lads sets my teeth on edge for some reason. They're not children, they're grown men. Why do they need to be protected from the presence of women? Leave the meeting feeling frustrated. Not angry, just frustrated that no one seems willing to even examine the assumption underlying the whole thing. Over the next few weeks, I can't stop thinking about it. Start noticing the men in sheds van around town, parked at the community center. Drive past sometimes and see through the windows, guys standing around workbenches, drinking tea, laughing. Looks pleasant enough, but also looks exactly like every other hobby group I've ever seen. Nothing happening in there that women couldn't participate in. Nothing about sawing wood or sanding furniture that requires a penis to accomplish. Mention it to my sister during our weekly phone call. She immediately gets what I'm saying, validates my concerns. It's just another way of making women feel like we're not welcome in certain spaces, she says. Exactly, thank you. Someone who understands. Start thinking about my own mother, widowed at 65, lives alone, always looking for activities. She probably loves something like the shed program. She used to help my dad with projects in their garage. But she couldn't join this even if she wanted to, purely because of her gender. Seems arbitrary and unfair when I think about it in those terms. Decide to make some inquiries through official channels. Send an email to the program coordinator, very diplomatic, asking if they've considered opening membership or creating a parallel program. Get back a response that's friendly enough but essentially says, this is working as intended, men need their own space, thanks for your interest. The brush-off bothers me more than an outright argument would have. Like my concerns aren't even worth seriously engaging with. Bring it up at a department meeting. Ask if we've done any equity analysis on our community programming. My manager gives me this look like I'm creating unnecessary work. Some things are fine to leave alone, he says. But why is this one of those things? Why does this get grandfathered in without scrutiny when we scrutinize everything else? If this were a whites-only group, people would lose their minds, rightfully so. But somehow, gender segregation is fine, is even celebrated as progressive because it helps men. Start to feel like I'm taking crazy pills because no one else sees the problem. Mention it to a friend from university, someone I usually agree with on social issues. Even she seems hesitant, says something about how men's groups might be genuinely needed. But why do they need to exclude women to function, I ask. She doesn't have a good answer, just kind of shrugs. This becomes my litmus test for conversations. I bring it up and watch people's reactions. Fascinating how many otherwise progressive people suddenly become very invested in gender segregation when it's framed as helping men. The same people who'd argue against male-only golf clubs are suddenly defensive about male-only sheds. Seems inconsistent to me. Seems like principles should apply regardless. Decide I need to push this harder, make it an actual policy issue. Start documenting everything, building a case for why publicly funded programs should be accessible to all genders. Submit a formal inquiry through the Council's Equity and Inclusion Office. Request a review of the Men in Sheds program's funding and mandate. This gets people's attention in a way my previous questions didn't. Suddenly, I'm getting emails from program coordinators, from the charity that runs the national organization. Everyone very concerned, very eager to explain to me why this is fine, actually. Have a meeting with 3 different people, all of them telling me I'm misunderstanding the purpose. It's not about excluding women, it's about creating space for men. Distinction without a difference as far as I'm concerned. One of them, older woman ironically, tells me I should pick my battles. Implies that this is a waste of political capital, that there are bigger issues. But representation matters everywhere. Access matters everywhere. That's the whole point of equity work. We don't get to choose which discrimination is acceptable. File a formal complaint under the Council's public accommodation policies. Cite chapter and verse of our own regulations about equal access to publicly funded resources. Feel vindicated when I realize the policy is clearly on my side. There's no carve-out for gender-specific programming, unless there's a compelling specific need. And men enjoy woodworking together is not a compelling specific need in a legal sense. Complaint triggers an actual review process, which feels like progress. Start getting emails from people in the community, not all of them supportive. One woman tells me I'm ruining something good for her husband, that he loves his Tuesday mornings at the shed. I reply very patiently, explaining that her husband could still have Tuesday mornings at the shed, just in a more inclusive environment. She doesn't write back. Another email from a guy calling me a typical bureaucrat, trying to destroy men's spaces. Delete it without responding, not worth engaging with hostility. But I screenshot it and add it to my documentation because it proves the sexist attitudes underlying this whole thing. The review process takes months, involves surveys and community consultations. I attend every single consultation session, make my case clearly and calmly every time. Public funding requires public access. Gender discrimination is unacceptable. Men can socialize in mixed gender environments just fine. Get a lot of pushback, lot of emotional appeals about male loneliness and suicide rates. Keep having to explain that I'm not against supporting men, I'm against excluding women. These should not be incompatible positions, but people treat them like they are. One guy at a consultation literally says, "Women already have everything, why do they need this too?" Almost laugh because the idea that women have everything is so absurd, it barely warrants response. But I calmly point out that women don't have access to this program, which is actually the entire issue. He just shakes his head like I'm being deliberately obtuse. Fascinating how many men seem to think that equality means oppression, that including women somehow takes something away from them rather than just expanding access. Review Board finally issues recommendations after 6 months. Suggests that programs receiving public funding should make efforts to be inclusive where possible. Stops short of mandating that Men in Sheds open membership, but strongly encourages it. Compromise language that doesn't fully satisfy me, but is at least progress. Council sends the recommendations to the program coordinator. He reaches out to me directly, asks if we can meet for coffee to discuss. Agree. Curious what he wants to say outside official channels. Meet at a cafe near the community center. He brings a folder of documents. Spends 20 minutes telling me about the program's history, the men who attend, their personal stories. I listen politely, but I'm waiting for him to get to the point. Finally, he says, "Look, what if we pilot an open membership model, see how it goes? Feels like a victory, like all my persistence paid off." That sounds like a reasonable step forward, I tell him. We shake hands, part on good terms. I feel satisfied with the outcome. Over the next few months, they transitioned to accepting members of all genders. Change their name to Men and Women in Sheds, which is a bit clunky but fine. Send out announcements through community networks about the new inclusive model. I make sure to share it widely, post about it on my social media, encourage women to join. A few months later, I'm reviewing program updates, and I see membership has shifted. Now roughly 50-50 men and women, which seems like a healthy balance. Exactly what integration should look like, equal participation. Feel genuinely pleased that we achieved something meaningful here. Then I'm at the community center for an unrelated meeting and decide to walk past the shed space. Curious to see how the integrated model is working in practice. Peek through the window and see a mix of people at the workbenches, women and men working on projects. Looks fine, looks exactly like it should. People collaborating and learning. But then I notice something odd. There's a separate, smaller room off to the side with a closed door. Ask someone in the hallway what that room is. Oh, that's the quiet room. Some of the guys set it up for model trains and stuff. Something about the phrasing catches my attention. Just the guys? I ask. Yeah, I think it's just the men who use it. They wanted a quieter space. Feel this immediate spike of irritation. Walk over and look through the small window in the door. 4 or 5 older men sitting around a model train layout, chatting quietly. No women in there at all. Stand there watching for a minute, trying to process what I'm seeing. They integrated the program, and the men immediately created a separate male-only space within it. Completely undermined the entire point of integration. It's like they complied with the letter of the policy while violating the spirit. Spend the rest of the day fuming about it. I can't focus on my actual work because I keep thinking about that quiet room. The fact that they felt the need to create a space away from the women. What does that say about their attitudes, about whether integration actually worked? If the mixed gender environment was fine, they wouldn't need a separate retreat. The existence of the quiet room is proof that they never really accepted women's inclusion. Send an email to the program coordinator asking about the room. He replies explaining, it's just a space for people who want to work on quieter hobbies. Anyone is welcome to use it, he writes. But I know that's not true because I saw who was in there. And I know how these things work, how spaces become implicitly gendered, even without explicit rules. If it's all men using it, then women won't feel welcome, even if they're technically allowed. It becomes a de facto male space through social pressure and informal gatekeeping. Right back, explaining my concerns about the room, recreating segregation. Suggest that maybe they should rotate who has access or create structured integration. His response is shorter this time, less friendly. The quiet room is available to all members. We're not going to police who uses it when... Feel dismissed again, like my legitimate concerns are being treated as overreach. Bring it up with colleagues, trying to gauge if I'm overreacting. Get a lot of non-committal responses, people clearly not wanting to engage. One person says, maybe they just need a break from the noise. But it's not about noise, it's about the pattern, about what the separation represents. Decide to visit the shed during open hours to see for myself. Show up on a Thursday morning with a plausible excuse about reviewing program compliance. Coordinator greets me politely, but I can tell he's wary. Give me a tour of the space, showing me various projects people are working on. Everyone is friendly enough, no overt hostility, just people doing woodworking. Ask if I can see the quiet room. A moment of hesitation before he agrees, leads me over and opens the door. Same group of men, maybe one different guy, working on the model train setup. They look up when we enter, and I can see the flash of annoyance on their faces. Not at the coordinator, at me specifically, at my presence in their space. One of them actually says, this is supposed to be the quiet room. Implication clear, I'm an intruder, I'm not supposed to be here. Coordinator smooths it over, introduces me as council staff. They grudgingly nod. Spend maybe 2 minutes in there before leaving because the atmosphere is so obviously unwelcoming. Walk back out to the main workshop and observe for a while longer. Notice the social dynamics, how the men and women mostly work in separate clusters. Not completely segregated, but definitely self-sorting by gender. Couple of mixed groups, but mostly it's women with women and men with men. Strike up a conversation with a woman who's sanding a wooden box. Ask her how she likes the program, if she feels welcome. She's enthusiastic, says she loves having access to the tools and learning new skills. Do you ever use the quiet room? I ask. She looks confused for a second, then laughs. Oh, that's the boys' room. They do their trains in there. You could use it too, though, I point out. She shrugs. Wouldn't feel right. It's their thing. Exactly what I suspected. The room has become implicitly male, even without explicit rules. This is how segregation perpetuates itself, through social norms and self-selection. Leave the shed feeling frustrated and vindicated at the same time. Frustrated that the integration didn't work the way it should have. Vindicated that my instincts were right about the resistance. Spend the next few days thinking about what to do next. Could file another complaint about the quiet room creating de facto segregation. But I know how that would be received. More eye rolls, more accusations of overreach. Could try to organize women to deliberately use the quiet room, force integration, but shouldn't have to force it. The fact that force would be necessary proves the problem. Talk it through with my sister again. She asks me why I care so much about this specific issue. Question catches me off guard because I haven't really articulated it to myself. Think about it for a while before answering. Because it's the principle of the thing, I finally say. These small exclusions add up to larger patterns of discrimination. If we let men carve out their own spaces in publicly funded programs, we're endorsing the idea that mixed-gender environments are somehow problematic. She's quiet for a moment, then says, maybe some people just prefer gender-specific spaces. Feel betrayed that even my sister is questioning this. Sure, people can prefer whatever they want in their private lives, I say. But this isn't private, it's a public program, funded by everyone's taxes. And preferences don't justify discrimination. We end the call on an awkward note, tension unresolved. Over the next few weeks, I keep tabs on the SHED program from a distance, checking membership numbers, reviewing incident reports, looking for evidence to support my concerns. Membership stays roughly 50-50, which looks good on paper. But I know from my visit that the integration is superficial at best. Decide to write a detailed report on my findings. Spend several evenings drafting it, citing policy, documenting observations, building the case. Argue that the quiet room should be either fully integrated with active measures or eliminated. Argue that the program needs structured integration activities rather than just open access. Argue that we should be measuring success not just by membership numbers but by actual inclusion. Submit the report through official channels, copy it to several council members. Feel confident that I've made a compelling case. Get back a response from my manager asking me to come to his office. His tone in the email is not encouraging. Sit down across from him and he's holding a printed copy of my report. This is thorough work, he says, which should be a compliment but doesn't sound like one. But I need to ask if this is really the best use of your time. Feel my defenses go up immediately. Equity analysis is part of my job description, I point out. He sighs. Does this whole thing where he takes off his glasses and rubs his eyes. The SHED program is working fine, membership is up, participants are happy. You achieved what you set out to achieve with the integration. Continuing to push on, this is starting to look like a vendetta. Vendetta, that word hits me like a slap. I'm not pursuing a vendetta, I'm doing my job. The program claims to be integrated, but it's maintained segregation through the back door. He cuts me off, tells me he's reassigning the SHED program oversight to another team member. Says I'm too close to it, too invested to be objective. Implies, without saying directly, that I'm letting personal feelings cloud professional judgment. Leave his office feeling humiliated and angry. Angry at him for dismissing my concerns. Angry at the whole system for protecting these little pockets of male privilege. Angry at myself for caring so much about something everyone else seems fine ignoring. Go home that evening and pour a large glass of wine. Sit on my couch scrolling through social media, looking for validation. Post a vague status about how exhausting it is to fight for equity when no one else sees the problem. Get a handful of supportive comments but also some pushback. One acquaintance comments, maybe pick your battles, not everything is a crisis. Same phrase the older woman used months ago. Apparently wanting equal access to public programs is making a crisis out of nothing. Delete the post because I don't have energy for online arguments. Spend the weekend in a funk, questioning whether I've been wrong about all this. Maybe I am too invested, maybe I am seeing problems where there aren't any. But then I think about that quiet room, about those men's faces when I walked in. The clear message that I wasn't welcome, that my presence was an intrusion. And I know I'm not wrong, I know exclusion when I see it. Monday morning, get an email from a council member I copied on my report. Asks if I'd be willing to meet to discuss my findings. Feel a flicker of hope. Maybe someone in leadership actually cares about this. Meet with her Tuesday afternoon. She's a younger woman, relatively new to council. Seems genuinely interested in the equity issues I've raised. Walk her through everything. The history, the integration, the quiet room problem. She listens carefully, asks good questions, seems to get it. What outcome are you looking for? She finally asks. Have to think about that because I've been so focused on identifying problems, I haven't clearly defined solutions. I want the program to be genuinely inclusive, I say. I want women to feel as welcome and comfortable as men. I want us to stop treating male-only spaces as something worth preserving in publicly funded programs. She nods slowly. Those are reasonable goals, but I'm not sure they're achievable through policy alone. You can mandate access, but you can't mandate culture change. Frustrating answer because it's true but also feels like giving up. So what? We just accept that men are going to recreate their boys' clubs no matter what we do. She smiles sympathetically. I'm not saying that. I'm saying you might need different strategies. We talk for a while longer about possible approaches. She suggests working with the program to develop community-building activities, structured integration, maybe bringing in facilitators who specialize in inclusive group dynamics. All sounds fine in theory, but I'm skeptical it will work. The men who want their separate space are going to want it regardless of facilitation. Thank her for her time and leave feeling slightly better but still frustrated. Over the next few months, the Shed program continues operating as it has been. I'm no longer directly involved in oversight, so I only hear things secondhand. Apparently, they did some kind of community building workshop that went fine. Membership numbers stay stable, no major complaints filed. From an administrative perspective, it's a success story. But I know the quiet room is still there, still implicitly male, still serving as a retreat from integration. Occasionally drive past the community center and see the Shed van parked outside. Always resist the urge to stop in and check on things. Not my assignment anymore, need to let it go. But can't quite let it go because the principle still bothers me. We made this space accessible, and the men immediately found a way to exclude women again. Proves that integration doesn't work if people are determined to resist it. Proves that male solidarity and male bonding are valued over inclusion. Mention it occasionally to friends or colleagues when relevant topics come up. Gauge reactions, try to find people who share my perspective. Mostly get a lot of, non-committal responses. People who don't want to argue but also don't really agree. Start to feel isolated in my convictions. Like I'm the only person who sees this pattern, this problem. Maybe that should tell me something, but I can't figure out what. Either everyone else is blind to inequality, or I'm seeing inequality where it doesn't exist. Trust my own analysis and experience enough to believe it's the former. A few more months pass and I'm at a community event, some kind of council open house. See, the Men and Women in Sheds program has a table set up, displaying projects members have made, recruiting new participants. Walk over out of curiosity, look at the wooden birdhouses and cutting boards on display. Coordinator is there. We make awkward eye contact. He's polite, asks if I want to see what the program has been up to. Show me photos on a tablet, pictures of workshops and completed projects. Diverse group in the photos, men and women working together, everyone smiling. Looks great for promotional purposes. We've really grown since opening up membership, he says. Can't tell if he's thanking me or rubbing it in. That's good, I say neutrally. He shows me a few more photos, then swipes to one that catches my attention. Picture of the quiet room, the model train setup, 4 men working on it. Caption underneath says, Specialty interest groups within the program. Feel that familiar irritation rising. Still maintaining the quiet room? I ask. He nods enthusiastically. Oh yes, very popular. Some of the members are really into the model railway. Any women involved in that group? I ask, knowing the answer. He pauses. It's open to anyone interested, but currently it's mostly the original members who use it. The original male members, I clarify. His smile gets tighter. Anyone is welcome. We both know that's a dodge, but I don't push it. Thank him for his time and walk away. Spend the rest of the event distracted, thinking about that photo. They're proud of the quiet room, proud enough to feature it in promotional materials. Not hiding it, not ashamed of the de facto segregation. Actually promoting it as a feature of the program. Specialty interest groups. Find the council member I met with months ago, pull her aside. Did you see the Sheds display? I ask. She nods. Yes, program seems to be doing well. They're promoting the segregated space as a selling point. She gives me a look that's half sympathy, half exasperation. It's a model train club, not a conspiracy. It's a male-only space within a supposedly integrated program, I counter. She sighs. Do you really want to restart this fight? Realize in that moment that I've lost whatever political capital I had on this issue. I'm now the woman who won't let go, who keeps pushing when everyone else has moved on. Become the unreasonable one by virtue of persistence. Don't have a good answer for her, so just shake my head and walk away. Drive home that evening feeling defeated in a way I haven't before. Not angry, just tired. Tired of explaining the same concepts over and over. Tired of being treated like I'm making problems out of nothing. tired of watching patterns of exclusion get excused and normalized. Pour another glass of wine and sit on my couch in the dark. Think about all the time and energy I've put into this issue. Could have been working on other things, other causes, other battles. Maybe everyone telling me to pick my battles was right. But if I don't fight for equity in public programs, who will? If I accept segregation in small things, where does it end? Feel stuck between conviction and exhaustion. Next few weeks, I intentionally avoid thinking about the SHED program. Focus on other work, other community initiatives that feel more tractable. But it nags at me in quiet moments, the unresolved feeling. The sense that I identified a real problem but failed to solve it. A month later, I'm reviewing annual program reports. Men and Women in Sheds has submitted theirs, full of positive metrics and testimonials. Page 3 has a quote from one of the longtime members. Older man talking about how the program has enriched his life. I appreciate that we've opened up to everyone, but I'm also grateful we've kept spaces where the original lads can still have our own conversations and projects. Read that line 3 times, feeling vindicated and furious. There it is in black and white, in their own official report. Admission that integration was accepted only insofar as it didn't actually change anything. That they kept their male space, despite the policy changes. Screenshot the quote, send it to the council member with a simple message. See? She doesn't respond. Send it to my manager with a note asking if this aligns with equity policies. He responds tersely that the program is meeting its mandate and the quote doesn't indicate policy violation. Sit at my desk staring at that response. Technically, he's right. They are meeting the letter of the policy. Membership is open, no explicit rules, excluding anyone. But the spirit of inclusion has been completely undermined. And no one cares except me. Begin to understand that I've been fighting a battle that can't be won through policy. Because the resistance isn't in the rules, it's in the culture. And culture doesn't change because someone like me files a complaint. Feel the weight of that realization. All this effort, all this time, all this political capital spent. And the men still have their room, their space, their retreat from women. They just renamed it and reframed it, and everyone accepted that as good enough. Decide to draft one final memo on the subject. Detailed analysis of how the program's integration has failed to achieve meaningful inclusion. Cite the quiet room, the self-sorting, the quote from the annual report. Recommend either genuine enforcement of integration or honest acknowledgement that the program remains partially segregated. Spend a week crafting it, making sure every point is documented and defensible. Submit it through official channels, mark it as a formal equity assessment. Feel both satisfied that I've made the complete case and resigned that it won't matter. Get back a response 2 weeks later from a deputy director I've never met. Formal letter, acknowledging my assessment and thanking me for my diligence. States that the program will continue operating under its current model. Notes that participation and satisfaction metrics are strong. Concludes that no further policy changes are needed at this time. That's it. End of discussion. Case closed. Sit holding the letter, feeling something between anger and relief. Angry that they dismissed everything I documented. Relieved that I can finally stop fighting this. Show the letter to my sister during our next call. I'm sorry they didn't listen, she says. Unexpected sympathy after our previous tension on the subject. Did you read the whole assessment I sent you? I ask. Pause before she answers. I did. And you still think I'm wrong about this? Another pause, longer this time. I think you were right that there's a problem, she finally says. But I'm not sure your solution was the right approach. Ask her what she means. You tried to force integration on people who didn't want it. And they complied minimally while finding ways to maintain what they wanted. Maybe if you'd worked with them instead of against them, built trust, you could have achieved more. Want to argue, but something about her words resonates. Remember all the meetings, all the complaints, all the formal procedures. Remember how defensive everyone got, how resistant to my involvement. Maybe I did approach this as an adversarial enforcement action rather than collaborative problem solving. But also, why should I have had to coddle men into accepting basic equity principles? I shouldn't have to hold their hands and sweet-talk them into not discriminating, I say. Sister sighs, maybe not, but if your goal was actually changing the outcome rather than being right, different tactics might have worked better. Stings, because it feels like she's blaming me for their resistance. But also, undeniably, my tactics didn't work. The program is still functionally segregated despite all my efforts. We end the call, and I sit thinking about what success would have actually looked like. Did I want the quiet room eliminated, men and women forced to integrate constantly? Or did I want genuine voluntary inclusion, women feeling welcome everywhere? Realize I'm not sure I know the difference anymore. Realize maybe I got so focused on the policy fight that I lost sight of the actual goal. But no, that's not right either. The goal was always inclusion. The men were the ones who resisted, who found ways around the rules. I can't be blamed for their determination to maintain exclusivity. Feel trapped in this circular thinking, unable to find resolution. A few months later, I'm at a different community event, this one focused on senior services. See a flyer for a new program, Women's Crafting Circle. Weekly gathering at the community center for women to do knitting, quilting, various crafts. Funded through the same community development budget as the Sheds program. Explicitly women only, right there in the description. Stand looking at the flyer for a long time. Should be upset about this. Should file a complaint about gender discrimination. Same principles apply. Public funding requires public access. But I feel nothing, no outrage, no impulse to challenge it. Why is that? Why does women-only space feel different than men-only space? Try to articulate it to myself. Because women have historically been excluded from so much, their spaces are compensatory. Because women need safety from male aggression in ways men don't need safety from women. Because women's solidarity is about empowerment, while men's solidarity is about maintaining privilege. These explanations feel right, but I can also hear how they'd sound to someone who disagreed. Special pleading, double standards, exactly what men's advocates always claim. Take a photo of the flyer and put my phone away. Not going to report it, not going to challenge it. But the existence of that flyer and my reaction to it reveals something I don't want to examine. Go home and sit with the discomfort for a while. Pour a glass of wine, which has become too much of a habit lately. Think about the men in that quiet room with their model trains. Are they really so different from women in a crafting circle? Both groups wanting space with their own gender, their own conversations, their own community. Want to maintain that there's a meaningful difference, but struggling to define it clearly. Weekend arrives, and I'm having lunch with a friend I've known since university. Someone who usually shares my perspectives on social issues. Mention the Shed program saga, give her the full story. Expect validation, expect her to be outraged on my behalf. Instead, she's quiet for a while before responding. Can I ask you something without you getting defensive? Already getting defensive, but I nod. Why was this the hill you chose to die on? I mean, of all the equity issues in community services, why this one? Don't have a good answer ready. Because it was clearly discriminatory, I say. And because no one else was challenging it. She nods slowly. But did the men there actually harm anyone by wanting their own space? Like material harm, not theoretical harm. Want to say yes, want to point to all the women excluded. But the program is integrated now. Women do have access. And the quiet room is technically open to everyone, even if women don't use it. They reinforce gender segregation in a publicly funded program, I say. She makes a face like she's thinking hard about how to phrase something. You know, I agree with you on most feminist issues, she starts. But I think men are allowed to want to be around other men sometimes. And if they're not hurting anyone, maybe that's okay. Feel betrayed even though her tone is gentle. So you think the segregation is fine? I think forcing integration when people don't want it creates resentment without actually helping anyone. Exactly what happened. She's right about the outcome, even if I don't agree with her conclusion. We move on to other topics, but the conversation sticks with me. Is wanting male-only space inherently harmful, or is my resistance to it the problem? Question feels dangerous because it undermines everything I've believed. But can't stop thinking about it. Spend the next few weeks in a weird mental space. Doing my job, but questioning my own judgment on things I used to feel certain about. See the Sheds van around town and don't feel angry anymore, just tired. Tired of caring about something no one else seems to care about. Tired of being the person who can't let things go. Month later, there's a retirement party for one of the longtime Shed members. Held at the community center, open invitation to community services staff. Decide to attend out of some impulse I don't fully understand. Maybe closure, maybe curiosity, maybe just self-punishment. Arrived to find a decent crowd, mix of Shed members and community people. Retiree is an older man, one of the original members, one of the quiet room regulars. People giving speeches about his contributions to the program. Talk about how he helped build the model railway setup, how he mentored new members. All very warm and complimentary. I stand in the back drinking punch and feeling like an outsider. After the speeches people mingle, I end up in a conversation with a few Shed members. Mostly men, but one woman I recognize from my previous visit. They're friendly enough, asking about my work, making small talk. One of the men mentions the program's growth, how different it is from the early days. Must be quite a change having women involved now, I say, can't help myself. He nods. It is, but good change mostly. Mostly? I ask. He seems to realize he's stepped into something and backpedals. All good, just different is all. The woman jumps in. I think what he means is the dynamic changed, which is natural. That's why some of the guys like having the quiet room, bit of the old atmosphere. She says it so matter-of-factly, like it's perfectly reasonable. Doesn't it bother you that there's a space you're implicitly not welcome in? I ask. She looks genuinely confused by the question. I could go in there if I wanted, I just don't want to. They're doing trains. I'm not interested in trains. But it's not really about trains, though, is it? I press. Now she's looking at me like I'm being weird. I mean, it is about trains, they've got a whole layout. One of the men laughs. She's right, it really is just about trains. Feel like I'm in a different conversation than they are. Try one more time to explain about the implicit exclusion, the gendered dynamics. They're all looking at me with polite confusion. Realize they think I'm overcomplicating something simple. Or maybe I am overcomplicating something simple. Excuse myself and leave the party early. Drive home feeling more confused than I've been through this entire process. The woman who uses the program doesn't see a problem. She's perfectly happy with the arrangement, feels welcome, enjoys participating. Am I fighting for women who don't want my advocacy? Am I creating problems that the supposed victims don't experience? Pour wine, sit on couch, stare at wall. This has become my ritual for processing discomfort. Think about everything that's happened over the past year plus. All the meetings, complaints, reports, political capital spent. Outcome. Program is technically integrated but functionally unchanged. Men still have their space, just reorganized it to comply minimally with policy. Women have access, but many don't care about the quiet room anyway. And I'm the person everyone thinks is unreasonable and overly focused on minor issues. What did I actually accomplish besides making myself unpopular? Question hits harder than I expect. Always thought of myself as principled, as standing up for what's right. But what if I'm just inflexible, unable to see nuance or accept compromise? What if my sister was right that different tactics would have worked better? What if my friend was right that this wasn't the hill to die on? What if everyone telling me to let it go was actually giving good advice? Feel the certainty I've always had about my own judgment starting to crack. Scary feeling, disorienting. Who am I, if not someone who fights for equity and inclusion? Who am I, if I was wrong about this? Sleep badly that night, dreams full of arguments and closed doors. Wake up Monday morning with a decision made somewhere in my subconscious. Going to let this go, finally actually let it go. Not because I think I was wrong about the principles, but because continuing to fight is hurting me more than it's helping anyone. Get to work and archive all my files on the Shed program. Move them to a folder I won't look at again. Feels both relieving and like giving up. A few weeks pass, life continues, other issues arise at work. Find myself actually enjoying my job again when I'm not obsessing over the sheds. Why did I let this consume so much energy for so long? Month later, I'm in a meeting about community program budget allocations. Men and women in sheds comes up as a line item. Manager asks if anyone has concerns about their funding renewal. I stay quiet, don't raise my hand, don't bring up any of my previous objections. Funding gets approved without discussion. Feel both relieved and sad. Relieved that I'm not fighting anymore. Sad that the issues I identified are just going to persist. Colleague catches me after the meeting. I noticed you didn't say anything about the Sheds program. Yeah, I'm done with that particular battle, I say. She nods approvingly, probably for the best. Want to ask her if she ever thought I had a point, but don't. Wouldn't change anything, and might just make me feel worse. Life continues, weeks turn into months. Occasionally see the Shed van or hear mentions of the program. Don't feel the spike of anger anymore, just vague resignation. This is how these things perpetuate, through everyone deciding it's not worth fighting, through everyone choosing their mental health over principles, through exhaustion and isolation, wearing down resistance. Understand now how systemic inequality maintains itself. Not through overt discrimination, but through 1,000 small surrenders. People like me who identify problems but can't solve them and eventually give up. 6 months after the retirement party, I'm at another community event. See the program coordinator across the room. We make eye contact and he walks over. Haven't seen you around the shed lately, he says. Not really my scene, I reply. He nods. Well, the offer's always open if you want to learn some woodworking. Something about his tone, friendly but slightly patronizing. Like he won, like he outlasted my concerns and now everything's back to normal. I might take you up on that, I hear myself say. He looks surprised. Really? That'd be great. We chat for a few more minutes before parting. Spend the drive home wondering why I said that. Don't actually want to join the program. But something about his assumption that I wouldn't bothered me. Like I'm not welcome there despite all the integration work. Next week I show up at the shed during open hours. Tell myself I'm just curious, just seeing how things are going. Coordinator seems genuinely pleased to see me. Sets me up at a workbench with a simple project, cutting board. Shows me how to use the tools, very patient and encouraging. Feel awkward and out of place, but determined not to show it. Work on my project for an hour, very aware of being watched. Some of the regulars I recognize clearly remember me from all the previous conflict. They're polite but distant, wary. Finish my session and thank the coordinator. Hope to see you again, he says. Non-committal response, leave with my half-finished cutting board. Don't go back the next week, or the week after. The cutting board sits in my closet, abandoned. Month later, I get an email forwarded through community services. Someone asking if I'm the person who advocated for opening the Men in Sheds program. Woman who wants to join the program in another borough and is facing resistance. Wants my advice on how I successfully integrated the program. Sit staring at the email for a long time. Finally type a response. Tell her the basic facts, filed complaints, cited policy, forced minimal compliance. Then I stop and delete it. Start over with a different response. Tell her honestly, I achieved technical integration but not cultural change. The men complied but found ways to maintain their separate space. It cost me significant political capital and energy. I'm not sure I'd do it the same way again. Ask her what outcome she actually wants and whether fighting is worth it. Send it and feel both honest and defeated. She writes back thanking me and saying she's going to try a different approach. I'm going to ask if she can start a parallel women's program instead of joining the men's. Smart, probably smarter than my approach. Gives women access to the activity without forcing unwanted integration, but also reinforces segregation, maintains separate spheres. I'm not sure how I feel about that solution. Realize I'm still thinking about this in policy terms instead of practical outcomes. Maybe that's been my problem all along. Choose principles over people, rules over relationships. Fought for integration as an abstract good without considering whether anyone actually wanted it. Sit with that uncomfortable recognition. Year later, I'm reviewing annual reports again. Men and Women in Sheds is still going strong. Membership has actually grown, more women joining. Quiet Room still exists, still primarily used by original male members. But now there's also a design studio that's primarily used by women. Separate spaces within the integrated program, everyone apparently happy. Should bother me, but mostly I just feel tired. Tired of caring about this, tired of analyzing it. My manager was right. It's working fine. People are satisfied. The fact that it's maintained some gender separation seems to matter to no one but me. And maybe that should tell me something about whose problem this really is. Close the report and move on to other work. Later that week, I'm cleaning out my closet and find the abandoned cutting board. Still rough, still needs sanding and finishing. Think about throwing it away, but instead I put it in my car. Next Thursday, I drive to the community center. Walk into the shed with the cutting board. Coordinator looks surprised to see me. Thought I should finish what I started, I say. He sets me up at a workbench. Spend the next hour sanding, no one bothering me, just working. Actually kind of peaceful, meditative even. Finish the sanding, and the coordinator shows me how to apply oil. We chat while I work, just normal conversation about the wood and technique. Nothing about policy or integration, or any of the conflict. When I'm done, I have a completed cutting board. Simple, functional, made with my own hands. Thank him and leave. Put the cutting board on my kitchen counter, where I see it every day. Reminder of something, but I'm not entirely sure what. That I can complete things even if imperfectly. That sometimes process matters more than outcome. That maybe I took the long way around to learning how to sand wood. A few months pass, I go back to the shed occasionally. Not regularly, just when I feel like working on something. Nobody makes a big deal of it, I'm just another member. Notice the quiet room is still there, still used by the same guys. Doesn't bother me the way it used to. Or maybe I've just given up on being bothered. One Thursday, I'm working on a project and one of the quiet room regulars is at the next bench. We work in silence for a while before he speaks. Coordinator mentioned you were the one who pushed for opening up membership. Tense, waiting for confrontation. Yeah, that was me. He nods, keeps sanding. Wasn't happy about it at the time. But my granddaughter joined last year. She loves it. So I guess it worked out. I don't know what to say to that. Settles for, glad she's enjoying it. We go back to working in silence. Drive home that evening thinking about the exchange. He still has his quiet room, his mail space. But he's also glad his granddaughter has access to the program. Holds both things simultaneously without seeing contradiction. Maybe that's the reality I couldn't accept. That integration doesn't mean elimination of all gender-specific spaces. That people contain multitudes, want inclusion and separation in different contexts. Pour wine that evening, less out of habit than actual desire. Toast to myself, to ambiguity, to letting go. Still not sure if I was right or wrong about any of it. Still think there's something problematic about men needing spaces away from women. But also understanding now that problematic doesn't mean changeable through policy. And maybe that's the real lesson. Not that I was wrong to identify the issue, but that I was naive about my ability to fix it. Sit there with my wine and my cutting board, outsmarted not by any particular man, but by the reality of human social dynamics. People will always find ways to maintain what they want. Compliance doesn't equal acceptance. Policy doesn't equal culture. And sometimes the person most changed by advocacy is the advocate. Finish my wine and put the glass in the sink. Cutting board still sitting there on the counter. Functional, complete, imperfect. Kind of like everything else. Kind of like me. Be me. Still not sure what I learned. Still not sure if it mattered. But at least I finished the cutting board.